Now I invite Ami Ganatra, and she's the woman power. That's what we call her. And she is an alumnus of Indian Institute of Ahmedabad, management at Ahmedabad. She has over 15 years of experience in business strategy and consulting, living across 4 continents and working across a multitude of sectors. In her personal life, she is a devout yoga practitioner and a certified yoga instructor. She is also a student of Sanskrit and Indian knowledge systems. She has authored 2 books, Mahabharata Unravelled, Lesser Known Facts of Well-Known History, and Ramayana Unravelled, Lesser Known Facts of Rishi Valmiki's epic thus far. And she's an avid traveler. She loves to explore places and cultures. She chronicles her travel experiences and musings related to Indic wisdom. And here she goes. And her topic is the relevance of Mahakavya in the contemporary world.
Namaste, everybody. Very, very happy to be here. But before I start, I want to say, Yashoda ma'am, that was fantabulous. Like, what do I say? I was in tears while you were saying it, and I was like, I don't think I'll remember what I have to say next, because that was extremely touching and extremely powerful. In fact, that leads me to my topic, why it is so important to know our history for what it is. What happens when we lose connect with our history? What happens when we forget our own culture and our past? What happens when our history is weaponized and used against us? Not only that we lose our identity, we lose our dignity, we lose our sanskaras. As Dr. Jaikumar had mentioned, he showed this one last slide. On the last slide, he had this excerpt from a US policy something, where they said, when people forget their history, or by people forgetting their history, you weaken a nation. And this has been happening to us forever, since the time the Britishers came. In fact, this whole study of Indology, as Vishwa Adluri tells us, right, started with Germans wanting to understand their own history, their own past. We all latch on to our past. It is the past which tells us or gives us our identity. It is the past which sets standards that we aspire to be. So you all remember, Trump used to say, let's make America great again. Again. Why again? Because again, you are going back to the past. We all look for our identity and our pride in our past. And that is why knowing history for what it is, our own history, is extremely important. Otherwise, history will be weaponized and used against us. Not going into detail here, and given this audience, I assume I don't even need to prove why Mahakavyas, which is Mahabharata and Ramayana, that is all I know, that is what I'll talk about, is Itihasa. Usually I start my talk explaining what is Itihasa and all of that, not going on that part here at all, because I assume we all believe it is Itihasa. And again, this Itihasa as well has been narrated to us in such a way that can act as something that takes away our dignity. Very, very recent example. There was some clip going around on YouTube recently, where some incident about Sri Ram is taken, and a general narrative created is that आपका culture, आपका समाज तो ऐसा ही है, स्त्री द्वेषी, misogynist. You guys never respected women, not even women like Sita. बाकियों की तो बात ही छोड़ दो, right? And what happens? The women are even worse off because of this. Because our girls, our women, and let me say I am not an exception. Till I read Itihas for what it is, I was also one of those. We feel ki yaar, what kind of culture are we a part of that does not even recognize us, that does not give us any dignity, that has always been oppressive, always been patriarchal. Yeah, the usual terms thrown around. But what was the case? Is that really true? Yashoda ji made a case for Devdasis. The status that they had when they were called Kalavanta, people who were expert in art. From there coming down to depraved women. How did it happen? That is what is happening to most of our history. But what was Itihas supposed to be? What was Ramayana? What was Mahabharata? Let's see what the text says, and then I will connect it back to the topic that I want to talk about, the women. What was the position of women in our Shastras? Yeah. So that's because there's a lot that I can talk about, but given we have had this recent incident, I'll speak a little bit about the women, the position of women in our Shastras. But what do Shastras say? Because ma'am spoke about Kalavanta. Did you know that whom we call gods now, they were expert in Sangeet Nritya? All of them. For Krishna, of course we know. Shri Krishna, of course we know. He played the Basuri. He did Leela. He did Ras, of course. But did you know Shri Ram was called Gandharva Shrestha? He knew music. He was called a Gandharva Shrestha. Yeah. Arjun, of course we know, 5 years he learns dance and he becomes an expert, as expert that he actually teaches dance to the women of Virat's palace. Not just one of his daughters, no. In Mahabharata, he actually teaches dance to the women of the palace, which also shows how important Sangeet, Nritya, Kala were for our royal families as well. And that is why such art forms actually flourished, right? And ma'am, I'm never going to use the word Devdasi again. Kalavanta it will be. So, as I said, what does our culture, what do we understand Mahabharata Ramayana as, right? So for Ramayana, it is said, Kamartha guna sayuktam, Dharmartha guna vistaram, Samudram iva ratnadhyam, Sarva Shruti manoharam. It says Ramayana has like, it's the best, it's the collection of topics related to Kama, Dharma, Artha. It is as beautiful as the Ratnas that you find in the Samudra. It has all the wisdom of the Shrutis. Similarly, when we talk about Mahabharata, it says, Dharma Shastram idam punyam, Artha Shastram idam param, Moksha Shastram idam proktam, Vyasena Amita Buddhina. It is a Dharma Shastra, it is an Artha Shastra, it is a Moksha Shastra. It covers all aspects of Laukika, Vyavharika, Paramarthika, all of it. Read the way you want to. However, when we say that there is so much to gain from it, it is important again to know Itihas for what it is. And we'll take certain examples. Now getting into the topics. You know, we have generally an idea is that women were not empowered enough. The question is, what is empowerment? What is empowerment? I would say empowerment is having an agency. Agency over decision making. Decision making over important decisions of our life. What was the situation then? We'll take few examples, both Ramayana and Mahabharata, and time permitting, I'll get into the details of the Sita episode as well. Yeah. So let's start with Mahabharata. Mahabharata is called Mahabharat because of Bharat. Bharat are the Vanshaj of Bharat. Bharat was a king who was an ancestor of the Kauravas and Pandavas. Who was the mother of Bharat? Anybody? Shakuntala. Now usually the image of Shakuntala that we have is of Abhigna and Shakuntalam, the beautiful poetry of Kalidas. The personality, the Vyaktitva of Shakuntala in Abhigna and Shakuntalam and Mahabharata is actually very different. In Mahabharata, she is a feisty woman who speaks her mind, who takes her own decisions. Let's see how the marriage happens. Yeah? So Bharat is born to Shakuntala and Dushyant. Shakuntala and Dushyant meet in the forest. Shakuntala is very beautiful, Dushyant falls for her. Dushyant is also very handsome. Shakuntala also falls for him. Dushyant says, come marry me. She says, Arey, no, how can I marry you? I need to ask my father. Dushyant says, Arey, don't worry. Gandharveshu, Vivaheshu, Gandharva Shrestha. Gandharva Vivaha is the Shrestha in Vivaha. Gandharva Vivaha is what we call love marriage today. Miya bivi razi, kya karega kazi? It's basically that. Yeah, both agree. Why do you need anybody else? So he says, Gandharvena vivahena mam ahi. Through Gandharva vivah, come to me. And she's like, okay, chalo. She agrees. They get married. Okay, she has a kid. Dushyant doesn't come back. Then her father Kadva and others decide that he doesn't come back, so what? The kid is still his, so let us go to his palace and basically we'll get him to accept you. Dushyant doesn't accept. And when Dushyant refuses to accept, you should see how Shakuntala makes her point. You should see the fire in her, the confidence in her when she tells Dushyant that you are lying. She also says one statement which tells us what was the position of women, especially the bharya, the wives. She says, Ardha bharya manushyanam, bharya shreshtatam sakha, bharya moolah trivargasya. Bharya is the best friend of a grahastha. This also comes in Yaksha Prashna, when a Yaksha asks Yudhishthir, who is the best friend of a grahastha? And he says the same thing, Bharya. Bharya is your best friend. Why? Because Bharya Moola Trivargasya. What are Trivarga? Dharma, Artha, Kama. We talk about Chaturvidha Purushartha, which is Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha. For Dharma, Artha, Kama, for living a fruitful life as a grahastha, you need a wife who's going to support you in all your activities. Yeah. So she reminds Dushyant of that. Of course, then there's a little bit of to and fro. And she says, okay, fine, doesn't matter. What do you not accept me? I only don't want to live with a liar like you. And all that happens. And then eventually it's all fine because there's an Akashvani. And Dushyant says, I wanted everybody to accept you rather than, people having questions around this. So anyway, so it's all bhala changa after that. But here is a woman who's not giving up, who's not crying, who's fighting for her rights and saying it as it is in the court of a king. Was she not empowered? It couldn't have happened suddenly, right? This is through your upbringing only that you're able to speak to a king like that. This is Shakuntala. There's a story of Satyavati which comes in Mahabharata. It comes in Puranas as well, but Satyavati. So Satyavati also, I'm not going to go into the details, but when she is of marriageable age, her father says, you find out. Tum jaake dhoond lo who you want to marry. And she is the one who travels around, seeing who she likes, and eventually she likes Satyavan. So again, it is her call. And of course, we know how erudite and how intelligent she is, that she has a dialogue with Yama. Yeah, so Yamraj ke saath wo samvad karti hai, and Yamraj is basically then convinced to give her boon and the life of Satyavan back. Who are the others? Let's talk about the smaller examples, क्योंकि बड़ी examples तो हम जानते हैं. There is a lady called Ulupi. Heard of Ulupi? Who was Ulupi? Naga princess and Arjun's wife. You know how the marriage happens? So Arjun is on a 12-year vanvas of sorts because Yudhishthira and Draupadi were sitting in the room when he enters, and apparently they had a pact that when one of the brothers is with Draupadi, the other one shouldn't enter. So Arjun enters and Yudhishthira is like, you don't really need to go because we understand why you entered, but he's like, nahi, pact is a pact, rule is a rule, I'll go, and he goes. So he's just started his vanvas and he's reached Haridwar. He is doing a dubki like we do today in Haridwar when Ulupi sees him. Ulupi sees him and desire strikes her. She's overcome with passion. Arjun is that good looking and handsome, why not, yeah? But if a woman today were to approach a man and say, hey, I desire you, come to me, we look down. Victorian morals have actually completely brainwashed us. Here, Ulupi is going and telling Arjun that I really desire you, please come to me. If you don't come to me, I'll die. Now you see, Arjun is on a vanvas, yeah? So he tells Ulupi that I am here because I broke this pact. Now I have to basically live through brahmacharya for 12 years. So even if I wish to, I cannot fulfill your desire. Ulupi says, your brahmacharya is with respect to Draupadi. You broke the pact with Draupadi. Your brahmacharya is with respect to her, not with respect to me. And she says, the other thing is, even if, say, you break your pact and get some papa, you will get punya of satisfying a woman. So come to me. This is Ulupi. Do we look down upon Ulupi? No. She's still considered a queen of Arjun. Her son Iravan is the first Upapandav to die on the battlefield for his fathers. Yeah? And Ulupi, after the war, they actually stay together as well. It's also shown that way. We don't look down upon them. There's another one, Bhim's first wife, Hidimba. Same thing. Why has she come? She's come to actually get these people, right? For her brother Hidimba. Hidimba tells her that I can smell humans. Go get them. She comes, she sees Bhim, this strong, well-built, you know, aaj jo hum dekhte hain na, 6 packs, muscled man, chiseled face. And the description is like that, yeah? The description is like that there is like tej of Yauvan on Bhim's face. Hidimba falls for him. And then, what happens? Now, of course, his brother comes and Bhim and her brother fight and all that. After that, Bhim has killed his brother and she's like, no, but I want to marry you. Bhim says, I can't decide. You ask my mother. Tabhi bhi aise hi tha. So he's like, I can't decide, you ask my mother. And Hidimba actually requests Kunti. She said, I really deserve your son. Please let me marry him. And she says, fine, I'll let you marry him. You travel around with him as you want, but Raat ko he has to come back because he's the one taking care of us. They're living in the forest, right? And she agrees. And eventually, when she has Ghatotkach with him, she only says, okay, now it's time for you to go. I have a son through you and that's enough for me, now you go. And this Ghatotkach, you know, in the television, we generally think of it as someday in the middle of the war, he came to help. No, Ghatotkach has been a part of their life throughout. Even when they are in Vanvas, many a times Ghatotkach comes to help. Yeah? And in the war also, he's there from day one. Again, Hidimba comes from the Rakshasa tribe. Never looked down upon. There is a temple to her. Sorry. Yeah. There is a temple for Hidimba. Yeah. These are the women that we are talking about. Are they not empowered? Do they not have agency? Is this a characteristic of a society which is misogynist of all things? Stri Dveshi. Let's come to the more important characters. Draupadi. Draupadi is this thing, no? Draupadi के लिए तो हमेशा कहा जाता है बिचारी, देखो उसके साथ क्या हुआ. Of course, whatever happened to her was bad. But what was she as a woman? Actually, before that, one small trivia on Gandhari. When the introduction of Gandhari comes, they say Duryodhanasya janani artha shastra visharadau. Visharadau, dau is dual because uske pehle they are talking about Shakuni. So it's basically saying Shakuni and Gandhari, they are both nipun in what? Artha shastra. How could it be if this country, if this civilization did not let the women get educated, as we are usually told? Artha Shastra Visharadau. And Artha Shastra is not economics. Artha Shastra is basically state understanding of administration, economics, all of that. Yeah, not just economics. Clearly they were taught. And that comes out even more strongly when we look at Draupadi. When the Vastraharan is happening, that is a very traumatic situation, right? You absolutely are left, you are shocked. Ek to it happens suddenly. She's in that trauma. Even then, the woman is asking about legality. Jitam va api ajitam va. Am I won or am I lost? First you give me that answer. That apart, once the Vanvas happens, you should see the conversations, the samvad between Yudhishthir and Draupadi. There are times when she actually quotes Manu. Kartavyamiti kartavya, manoho eshaha vaditi, something like that she says. Ki this is what even Manu says. And she has a whole discussion, in fact she has a whole discourse on how one should always do karma. In fact, it is very similar to what we see in Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita में कृष्ण अर्जुन को जो ये discourse देते हैं on karma yoga. That is exactly what she says. She's telling Duryodhan how every jiva has to do their work. Then it is possible that the results might not come because results depend on more than just the human purushartha. It also depends on the daiva. She says that is also there, but you can't run away from doing work because everybody does work. There is a whole discourse on that. There is a whole discourse on how should a king behave with the subjects. On danda, She says that a Kshatriya who does not give danda when he needs to will never be appreciated, will never be respected. We say na Kshamak Shobhati us bhujang ko jiske paas garal ho. Even forgiveness, to first forgive somebody, you have to show what strength you have. This is exactly what she tells him. That first you show your anger, you show your power, then you talk about forgiveness. But she also adds that also it is not to say that you always have to be angry. A king who does not forgive when the right time comes, that is also not correct. Such king will also not be loved by his people. This is the discourse that Draupadi has. How can a woman who is not educated speak like this? They were extremely well educated, extremely well. She actually speaks her mind every time. Dabi hui striyan bolti hain kya? You know, it's like this, people keep saying, oh, India is a fascist country, and everybody goes around saying India is a fascist country. In a fascist country, you actually won't say that, right? It is the same thing. Striyan dabi hui hai, but striyas are making the most noise. So how can it be dabi hui oppressed striyan, right? And Draupadi is one example. We spoke about others. They are speaking their mind. But chalo, ye to baat ki baat ho gayi. What about the work that they did? Were they only, the queens who dressed up, lived very luxurious lives, had nothing else to do? Was it that? There is an extremely beautiful episode, one of my favorites in Mahabharata. It is called Draupadi Satyabhama Samvad. Do you guys know about it? Anybody? Draupadi Satyabhama Samvad? Surya ji knows. Okay. So in Mahabharata Unravelled, I've actually captured a lot of these stories, especially about the women in Mahabharata. Yeah? One of them, I also captured this part, Draupadi Satyabhama Samvad, in the chapter on Draupadi. So what happens is, the Pandavas and Draupadi, they are in Vanvas, of course, and Satyabhama and Shri Krishna, they come to meet her. When they come to meet her, the guys are talking, apna charcha kar rahe hain, and Satyabhama and Draupadi are chit-chatting. Also because the sons of Draupadi, all the Draupadiyas are living in Dwarka. So the kids, they spend time in Dwarka and Panchal. So Draupadi wants to know about her kids and stuff, so they're talking. Now in that, Satyabhama then asks, Satyabhama says, you have to give me tips. These Pandavas, what do? Tava mukha prekshaha. They are always looking at your face. Hamesha aapka chehra nihaarte rehte hain. And they do all that you tell them to do. Tell us, what is this power that you have over them? Is there a Vashikaran mantra? Do you have a Vashikaran mantra over your husbands? Tell me. Because you have 5 husbands and they all listen to you. I have one doesn't listen to me, man. So tell me something that I can do to keep Krishna in my Vasha, in my control. And Draupadi then explains her role as the queen of Indraprastha. Yeah? She says there is no Vashikaran mantra. It's not as if you can keep people in control through Vashikaran mantra. No, it doesn't work that way. She says, I'll tell you how I lived as the queen of Indraprastha. And she talks about all the kartavyas that she had. Of course, she says, I took care of my family, of my mother-in-law. All the other wives that the Pandavas had, I took care of all of them. But more than that, she says, every day in the royal palace, there would be like 80,000, the brahmacharis. There would be like lakh plus other guests and whatever, a huge number. She says like thousands and thousands of people who would eat in the royal kitchen. Now to ensure food is cooked for all of them, of course there were lots of people who helped. There were lots of men and women who were helping with this activity. So she says, not only did I ensure that all these people were fed properly, I also managed these people who were working to get this work done. I knew all of them by name. मैं सबको नाम से जानती थी. नाम रूपः जानami. I knew their name. I knew their, how they looked, what they did, and I also knew how much work was done and who did how much work. Yeah. Krutam akrutam eva. What was done, what was not done. How much is done, how much is pending. All that I knew. She said even more. When Yudhishthir was a king and he used to travel, there were lots of horses and rathas and this and that would go with him. I would ensure that he had everything that should go with him, went with him. I kept track of all those things. I kept track of what was coming, what was going. In fact, she says, the transparency that I had over treasury, nobody else had. She says, Sarva Ragnyaha Samudayam Ayam cha Vyayam cha Eko Ahamapi Vedmi. In the whatever came, the income and the expenditure, the treasury that we have, Eko Ahamapi Vedmi, only I was the one who had complete understanding of this. She adds, Eko Ahamapi Vedmi Koshaha Vai. Even the Koshaha, the entire treasury, I was the only one who knew completely. Just imagine, she was like the COO, CFO of the Indraprastha kingdom, man. Right? This is not a woman who is not empowered. In fact, to have somebody, for having complete transparency over the treasury, it would only be somebody you deeply trusted. Draupadi was that woman. And we talk about a civilization, we reduce it to misogyny based on some incident here or there, cherry-picked. That also twisted. Not understanding context. This is what the colonizers did. Unfortunately, we are also doing the same. Yeah? Okay, so this was on Mahabharata. Let's talk about some of the things now in Ramayana. Do I have time to expand? Yeah? Okay, how much time do I have? I know it's already late. Okay, anyways, I'll go on till I'm asked to stop. Done? Okay, sure. So fine, so this was about Mahabharata. Maybe Ramayana we'll capture some other day. Anyways, I have explained the Sita Agni Pariksha part in detail in some of the videos as well. So do check it out, and of course there are books. Thank you so much for having me. Jai Shri Ram, Jai Shri Krishna. Thank you.